Hello NCCTV viewers, this is Antonio Prado, Director of Communications for Newcastle County Government, and we are here tonight at a very important public workshop. County Executive Tom Gordon and our General Manager of the Department of Land Use, Eileen Fogarty, have invited members of the public, many people who are civically minded, land use attorneys, several intelligent people are here tonight to take part in a workshop that will contribute to the overall overhaul of the Unified Development Code, otherwise known as the UDC. Here at Newcastle County Government, the County Executive and many others have been impressed with Eileen Fogarty's talents and the way she's been able to elevate the game. Developers are coming to the county with better ideas, better plans, better aesthetics, and this workshop is about building on that momentum. So let's join the program.
Hi, I'm Janet Kilpatrick. I'm the councilperson for the 3rd District.
I'm Dave Tackett, councilperson for the 11th District.
So tell us your thoughts on this land use reform that we're undergoing here in Newcastle County. We've got a big workshop here tonight. There's a lot of civic, minded folks here to talk about what they think should be done. You guys are here as well to listen. You see these things all the time. What are your thoughts on tonight in general?
I'm happy to see as many people here as are, and a lot of people that I don't know, which means that there are different groups of people now that are coming to talk about this. I think that people are worried about the economy. Delaware's not coming back quite as fast as what some other states are, and I think they understand that there's a necessity to look at our process and look at how our land use codes work and how we can bring in and bring back some of the industrial and heavy commercial sites that we depended on for a tax base for many, many years and aren't here anymore.
Councilman Tackett?
Absolutely, yeah. As a co-chair of the Land Use Committee in Newcastle County, I think it's very important that we have a process that's understandable for anybody looking to come into this area and that wants to do a project here. I think that we end up having a balance that we have to draw between the community and the project that's going in. Recently we heard about a big supermarket that just came on. For some reason they decided to go 5 minutes over the line into PA. My immediate thought was, how come Delaware wasn't attractive? Why wasn't that same initiative given to the people to say, we're tax-free. Drive 5 minutes over the line here into Delaware to save that tax, as opposed to us driving 5 minutes over the line to pay the tax. So we need to look at what our hindrances are, what hoops that we're making them jump through, and then again we have a balance between our infrastructure.
Yeah, you're talking about the new Wegmans. Let me go back to something you said, Councilwoman. You mentioned the economic factor that the government has. County Executive Gordon has said often that's one thing you can't export to China.
Right.
Can you just talk a little bit about how when we have developments, it's just a healthy part of the economy in terms of providing real jobs with livable wages?
Well, actually, we had some of this discussion in an economic development subcommittee meeting about a week ago, where we talked about the quality of life and the balance between economic development and the open spaces that we have, and making sure that as we try to bring industrial back, or something that gives us livable wages, that we first have to decide who we are, who do we want to be, what type of jobs are we out there looking for, and what sites are basically shovel ready for those businesses to come to. We need to shorten the process, we need to get them into the system, and then we need to make sure that any surrounding residential areas, existing or potential, have some sort of buffering so that it isn't neighbor versus industry, that we need to look at the quality of life, we need to look at the air quality, the water quality, and basic quality of life of the residents that will be living around those sites. And I think it needs to be a comprehensive package, and I think our general manager of land use understands, coming from a planning background, understands all of that this is all about quality of life. It's about what businesses are here and how good the quality of life is for those people that live here, that work in those businesses.
Anything you want to add on those lines?
I think we need to do a little bit better job of our marketing. We have a lot of ingredients here to make a great product. We have 95, we have rail, and we have the port. Those are things that have to be extremely attractive to somebody looking to bring manufacturing back to the state of Delaware. We've lost. We got to start gaining. We got to provide a future, and we got to provide jobs for the next generations to come.
You know, and lastly, this is kind of Eileen Fogarty's swan song, our talented general manager for the Department of Land Use. Can you talk a little bit about what you've seen in terms of her effect? And, as I was saying earlier, with some of the plans that developers are coming to us with, you know, improving the aesthetics, the landscaping, the overall quality of the product that you're seeing. Can you just talk a little bit about the impact she's had?
I think that, again, coming from a planning background, that she has the ability, she's just a very quiet person and has the ability to sit down with people and to lead them through what makes a better plan versus just a plan. And I think that once people began to see how she was developing those plans and that they trusted her, that they all believed then that their plan would be better, and then the public seems to be much more receptive to the plans that are coming over. So I think she's done a great job. I'm hoping that this isn't her swan song and that she stays on for a little longer.
Councilman?
Arlene brought a unique attribute here that we hadn't seen before. She had experience that she brought and seen in other jurisdictions all over the United States. And many times we don't have to recreate the wheel here, and we're not the first ones to do it. It's already been done somewhere, and it's proven to be successful. We just need to duplicate that here. And I think she brought that experience here with her when she came. And it is sad day when we see her go, because there was so much more we could have done. Although she set us up fairly well, and she's going to get us started through this process with the UDC. So I'm looking forward to what we're going to have to pick up from here and move on. But I think she's brought a lot of value and really gave us a good foundation to move forward with.
We just need to make sure that the momentum keeps going.
Councilman Tackett, Councilwoman Kilpatrick, thank you very much for talking with NCC TV.
Good.
Thank you.
So to begin with, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Sophia Terabikos. I am a land use professional and paralegal at Terabikos Grasso LLP.
And Sean Tucker, I'm also involved in land use. I'm a land use attorney at Drinker Biddle and Reith.
Well, for me, I thought it was interesting and informative to hear the community's perspective on what they would like to see up front on the development side of things. So before a plan's brought to them, getting to hear what they'd like to see in a certain type of community. I know we had the mixed use commercial redevelopment scenario. So that was interesting to me, and I liked hearing that part of the process. I think we didn't touch on specific code provisions as much as I had anticipated, but it was still a useful process.
Sean?
I thought it was well done and well run tonight. I think about every 10 years or so, you really do need to revisit any zoning code. And I think, this was a logical time to revisit the code, see what's working, see what's not working. I particularly like the breakout into groups where you have people from different backgrounds discussing, real life scenarios. And it was refreshing to hear folks say, hey, look, we need redevelopment here. This makes sense. And so, it's nice to see when you get into a group with average residents, your average person that lives in Newcastle County, there's a lot of open-mindedness towards redevelopment, responsible development, job creation. And I think this group tonight was a really nice, broad-based representation that often, unfortunately, we don't see at county council. Sometimes we just see the, sort of the folks on the fringe that are in one direction or the other. This was a nice mix of folks, and I thought that brought about a better end result tonight about why we need development in certain areas, as long as it's done responsibly and in an appealing way.
Now, talk a little bit about some of the changes that you both have seen already since Eileen Fogarty took over as our general manager. As she likes to say, when land use developers and their attorneys come to Newcastle County to discuss their proposals and their projects, it's an opportunity to horse trade. Can you talk a little bit about some of the aesthetics, some of the design effects you've been able to have since you took over?
One thing I think Ms. Fogarty has done, perhaps more than other general managers, including myself, by the way, was...
a lot of people might not know, you were a former...
I was, and certainly was not the best. She certainly gets the best award, sincerely. But one thing that she has focused on, I think, more than others, but I will take some credit for putting it in the code, is there's a factor when you rezone that talks about character of the community, and that being an important factor, and it was always a very important factor. But one thing Ms. Fogarty has done, which I think it really makes her stand out, is she emphasized that prong of the analysis, perhaps more than other general managers. And what that has done, and I think we'll see it in the coming years, the projects that she has been involved with and has recommended in favor of have a higher architectural standard, if you will, than I think a lot of other prior projects. Not all of them, but more so. And that is because of her focus in that important area of the standard. And I think that is a positive for all of Newcastle County. Dan.
Sophia, you wanted to add?
I really just have to echo Sean's comments there. And I think we've found it very refreshing to be able to come into the department and experience a great dialogue about architectural styles, what suits the community, what's attractive, what's modern, and really what works on each site on a case-by-case basis, from the aesthetics to the way parking is laid out, to the way landscaping fits on the site. And she's been really great about that. She has a wonderful eye, and she has so much experience with planning dense or semi-dense spaces that I think she's brought a really interesting perspective to a lot of our clients' work.
Now, I was watching both of you, and you were active participants tonight in the workshop. You were here amongst the civic people who were, the civic leaders giving their inputs. And I just want to ask you guys about the economic impact this will have. County Executive Gordon likes to say that building development, that's something you can't export to China overseas. Can you talk about a little bit about how this process of overhauling EDC, improving it, will have a positive impact on the economy in terms of people working, building?
Okay. I think, as I mentioned earlier, the 10-year cycle is probably a good cycle to jump back into the code and see what's worked, what hasn't worked, what could work better. And I do think there are provisions that need to be adjusted one way or the other, either perhaps more friendly to development as long as it's done responsibly, and some that maybe need adjustment a little bit in the other direction. But I think what is clear is the code in '97, when it was adopted, went in one direction, which was restrictive, and that was at the time that's what communities and I think the electorate wanted. But what we are seeing in the developer community is we are losing good projects to other jurisdictions, particularly on the traffic front, and that is something in particular to me and my clients that is of concern. And so that is an area of the code in particular I think that we need to visit or revisit, and that a lot of that is regulated by DelDOT. And it's a really important discussion I think we need to have as part of this process with DelDOT and the county. And I think some folks just have to step back from it and ask themselves, do we want to lose a major employer or a major economic development opportunity because an intersection delays you 45 seconds instead of 30 seconds? And really we have those kind of situations in Newcastle County, and those kind of things really need to be revisited and looked at more practically, or we're going to continue to lose high quality development to other jurisdictions.
Sophia?
Yeah, and it's tough because it's an issue between flexibility for sites, giving them the ability to move with the market and change as they need, and put things on a site that actually works in an economically positive way, versus doing responsible development and making sure that when you do have great employers coming in, they know what to expect. They know that they won't experience these tiny difficulties at every step of the process from all kinds of things, particularly traffic, that will hold up their projects, and they can't predict how long it will take, what their challenges will be, and that's definitely something we're interested in seeing resolved.
And by the way, he wasn't here tonight, but I saw your father Larry at the workshop, I believe yesterday.
Yes.
At the Government Center.
He's
yes. Actively participating as well.
Yes, he was, and our new land use attorney, Michael Hoffman, was also there as well. They were both participating.
I'm sorry we're making you late for your...
That's okay.
But anything else you wanted to add? This is kind of... Eileen Fogarty plans on retiring soon. A lot of people are sorry to see her go. Any thoughts on her pending departure and some of the things that you've heard her say here tonight and elsewhere?
Very disappointed that she's leaving. Very disappointed. I think she's done a very nice job, an exceptional job, as I had mentioned earlier. And even tonight, I was glad to see her still so actively involved. Her heart has clearly always been in it. She is a copious note taker. When I've met with her, you know, and a month or two goes by, she's got the notes from the original meeting. I think she really put her heart and soul into this job. And I'm really disappointed, and I can tell you my clients are, not because we always agreed, but because she was always fair and balanced and logical in her analysis, and that's always welcomed. And it should be welcomed by developers and civics as well when you have that type of balance and that thoughtfulness. So very sorry to see her leave, very sorry. Hope she changes her mind.
You know, and it's always been so impressive to me how thoughtful she was and really took an interest in getting to know all of the developers by name, their styles, where they're from, getting to know the areas of Delaware. I know she always did tons of site visits constantly. And that's impressive, especially with her only being here for a year and a half, 2 years. I think our clients appreciated that. We appreciated that, that she really cared enough to not only make Delaware better, but to understand where our civics and our developer clients are coming from, and how she can make Delaware better in a way that Delawareans would appreciate.
Sophia Tarabico, Sean Tucker, thanks so much for taking time to chat with NCC TV.
Thank you. Thank you, Tony.
All right, now we're talking to two of the civic leaders here in Newcastle County. We have Bill Dunn and Mark Blake. Mr. Dunn, you're president of, tell us the organization.
Milltown Limestone Civic Alliance, and recent past president of the Civic League for Newcastle County.
And I'm Mark Blake, the vice president of GATA, which is Greater Hockessin Area Development Association.
Now, Newcastle County is undergoing this overhaul of the UDC. You guys are here to participate. Can you give us your thoughts on what you've seen so far, what you've heard, particularly under this general manager, Eileen Fogarty, who's really brought a lot to the table?
Well, over the past 18 months, she has reached out and tried to get a broader group of people to participate in the process and evaluate how land use has been handled at the point in time she entered her responsibilities as head of the department. So I got to give her some credit there, because there was a period previous to that where there was a more, in my interpretation, more slanted evaluation as to who should be participating in the process and what was most important. So I give Eileen a lot of credit for that. How things will evolve and when we'll get to a point where we will actually make significant changes in areas where I think the UDC has fallen short of its original intent, is yet to be seen. I have some level of optimism, though.
And Mark?
I'm a little more optimistic. I think Eileen's done a fantastic job. She's brought a perspective and a view that hadn't existed before in Newcastle County. And I applaud her efforts to get all the parties at the table. I mean, you get a developer, a landowner, a business owner, and the community together to sort of prime the pump as far as talk about issues before they get to the level of where county meetings take over, and then it's just a matter of the obligatory meetings and approvals or denials. It's sort of nice to see an involved approach where everybody gets a seat at the table, gets to voice their thoughts, and hopefully come up with a plan. I mean, not so much a compromise, but to come up with something that everybody can be happy about, and at the same time have a positive impact on the environment. I mean, stormwater, water recharge, those are all issues that are really near and dear to my heart out in our area of Hockessin because of the aquifer. But those are things that we need to look at if we're going to do any sort of development, whether it be residential, commercial, or industrial.
You know, I've known both you gentlemen for several years now. I met you as a reporter for the Community News. You guys have always been civically minded, very, very active and engaged. And it seems to me like one of the things you guys do is keep an eye on like development standards. You know, it's not so much about, you know, not in my backyard, but just, you know, is this development proper for the area? Is it going to look good aesthetically? Can you talk a little bit about, in those terms, what that means, for the overhaul that the UDC is going? You know, Mr. Dunn, you mentioned that maybe the original intent kind of got lost along the way, but we're trying to fix that. Can you talk a little bit about, how important this is?
I think one of the issues has always been that a lot of the times the developers weren't real communicative to the public about what their plan was. And I think with the UDC being looked at to be revised, there's a lot of little, to Bill's point, a lot of things in there that have been neglected over the years and a lot of things that need to be corrected. It's well overdue to have that done. And sometimes it's not just the project, but how it's going to look and fit into the existing community. And that's one of the things that we've seen these hometown overlays come in, where the character of the local community is addressed to how it looks. Does it fit the community? I mean, Hockessin goes back to the 1900s, early 1900s, and it's got 100 years of lack of planning to try to overcome. So to make things fit into the character of the community and yet still be a new business, I mean, Starbucks, for instance. I mean, you look at something like that, they're going to have their corporate identity, but that doesn't mean we want this 50-foot sign in the sky. We'd rather see something that's more in keeping with the character. So the UDC addresses a lot of technical issues, but a lot of the issues that people are concerned with is how does it look, how does it fit in, and how does it affect them in their daily commute.
Getting back to the fact that there have been significant changes in the UDC. One of the things that existed early on in its implementation was the fact that there were a whole series of meetings in many development plans and more prominently in major development plans where there were multiple meetings where the community had an opportunity to get up to speed and learn the things that they need to understand and the impact that major development planning might have in their area. Most people don't take the time that Mark and I have taken over the years to get a relatively in-depth understanding of how development planning works in Newcastle County until it comes along in their backyard. Early on in the UDC, there was a structure to it where there were exploratory hearings, and that's where people got the first opportunity to get a superficial understanding as to how the development process worked, so that when the next meeting, public meeting, came along, they had taken the time to go back, learn the things they need to learn, interact with the developers, understand transportation needs, walkability, numerous things that might come into play with a major development plan. And when they step back into the process, they were much better prepared. What had happened over the past 5 or 6, 7 years has been the elimination of public participation by eliminating hearings where they had an opportunity to participate. One of the things that I see as being a positive, not with Eileen and how she's approached things at this point, is one, she's brought people back into the process, but called on people like Mark and I who are a little better informed and asked for our input as to how do we fix the ills that may have developed over the years in the planning process, so that we can actually create a better structure for everyone. And how it's going to play out in the long run, I'm not quite sure at this point.
But are we on the right track?
Oh, definitely. Change is good if you're making things better and more transparent. And I think that's been some of the concerns in the past, is people didn't feel like they had an opportunity to get in front of something. It was almost like they looked for the yellow signs and the first thing was, oh my gosh, something's happening. And the issue of all development is bad is sort of starting to wane. Now it's about, can we get something that's going to help the economy, help our communities remain vibrant? Obviously you need housing, but if we're only housing and we have no jobs and no businesses, then we're just a bedroom community and become suburbia, and that's not going to help us because that's all traffic. And we know the county and the state kind of do this when it comes to traffic. They point at each other and say, well, that's your deal. We don't really care about that from that standpoint. We just want to make sure that there is a traffic study, it's acceptable levels, and to be quite honest, I mean, developers will pay to do improvements if you ask them if it makes sense for them economically. So there's some middle ground to be had, and I don't think the civics disagree that they have a role, and the developers obviously represent their landowners and their interests, but sometimes there's middle ground, and we've seen it, out in Hockessin, that we got a traffic light paid for by developers when the state said, oh no, it's too expensive and we don't need it. And it's been a great safety improvement, and it's helped the community. It's become a nice little area where we had blighted properties, and I defy you now to go out there and point to where those blighted properties were. They're gone, and they existed for 80 years, so it happens.
This is one point where Mark and I deviate in that he's highlighting the exception to the rule where the developer steps up and says, yeah, I'm more than willing to spend the money and address the transportation
We
issues.
twist their arm hard.
Quite frequently, and both at the state level and the county level, there is some level of control when it comes to further development or redevelopment as to how we handle transportation issues. One of the things that has come forward in the past 6-8 years is the concept of TIDs. And rather than doing an engineering structured traffic analysis under the old TIS structure, they would prefer to go with the TIDs. If you talk to many people in the civic organizations, they see it as an absolute travesty as to what the transportation needs are in most communities in Newcastle County. We need, they argue that the costs are too extensive and whatnot, yet in the 60s, 70s, 80s, the developers, as they move forward with major development planning, be it residential, be it commercial, be it industrial, whatever it was, took it for granted that they were going to have to make some road improvements in their development planning process. These days, there's a pushback from many people to say, well, we really would prefer not to have those immediate responsibilities, and we want to move forward with development as quickly as possible. So you have to come up with a concept as to how we can do it. I think they can still do it, but there's a cost burden that's going to come into play. How we share that cost burden, which I think we can do at multiple levels, but for the developer to say that we should have little to no responsibility or obligated responsibility is completely ridiculous.
Well, and lastly, I mean, you heard County Executive Gordon say he's going to try to talk Eileen into staying a little longer. We'll see how that goes. But
I wish him well. I hope he can convince her to. It would be good for all of us. And I'll say, Tom made a great choice when he found Eileen and brought her in. One of the things I'd like to say too, to Bill's point, the TIDs, it's an interesting concept, but I think the county has a great data bank of properties that they could use to help economic development. We talked a little bit about that earlier today. It's sort of like a TDZs, targeted development zones. Take something like the old Avon facility in Newark. We know it has infrastructure for electric. It's got sewer capacity. It's got the traffic already is there with the signalization. It has a rail spur nearby. Everything's there. We just need to find a business that can redevelop that site. And that's what we need to be looking at. Rather than greenfield development from fresh, we need to take some of our properties, the Boxwood plant at GM. I know the county executive's got some ideas on that. We applaud doing that because that is going to bring jobs and viability back to Newcastle County, and that's where sort of this thing of streamlining the UDC is going to help. If we can take existing commercial properties, industrial properties, and find a way to expedite the land use process, we can bring jobs, which is going to help everyone because we know the county only gets money from the transfer tax when houses are sold and houses are built, but with more jobs, there comes more tax revenue. We can do a lot of good by reusing and repurposing these existing parcels that are already out there.
Mark's hit on some pretty good properties that we need to look at and improving the process. And I think Eileen's moved far enough down the road that she has a good understanding as to how things operate in Newcastle County and the depth of her knowledge from other areas of the country that she's worked in. Really, it's a good fit to have her participate. But the two parcels that Mark just highlighted, General Motors and Avon, in the case of Avon, there's a developer moving forward right now that wants to go to a mixed-use kind of redevelopment plan where you've got an industrial rail spur right behind it. That might not be the best place to put a multi-use or project in. And it might be a better fit somewhere else, and we save that for the guy that's going to come forward with 50 or 100 industrial-oriented jobs and build an operation there. How we utilize both those properties are something that we need to preserve the ones that are going to bring the industrial jobs and bring development back to this area. and utilize other properties in other ways. There's plenty of properties in Newcastle County that need redevelopment. And what's the most responsible way to redevelop those? Barley Mill Plaza, General Motors. Chrysler has had its up and downs in that some of the things that they're utilizing that property for are widely accepted by the people in the community, and others face stark opposition. So it's how do you organize it and structure it and balance it with everything else? So.
Well, I just want to say, Mr. Dunn, Mr. Blake, it's great to see you guys here. You're civically engaged. You've been involved a lot of years, and I think that, the contributions of gentlemen like you are the reasons why when you drive through Milltown or the Limestone Road Corridor or Hockessin up north in the Mill Creek 100, they're beautiful areas, and, just want to thank you for your service.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Tony. Have a great night.
Okay, I'm here with the star of the show tonight, Eileen Fogarty, our very talented, very hardworking general manager of the Department of Land Use. And Eileen, first of all, I have to say, tonight was a success. You had a lot of people here. It was a full house. You had land use attorneys and their associates. You had civic leaders. You had 4 or 5 members of council. Let me see: Councilman Powers, Councilwoman Kilpatrick, Councilwoman Diller, Councilman Tackett, and
planning board members.
yeah. There was a lot of people here tonight. Can you just talk a little bit about the participation that you had?
It was fantastic, and these people gave up their evenings and came. We had people from the environmental community. We had people who had never been involved before, who saw the ad in the paper, and
Wow.
we had students from University of Delaware, and it was fantastic because the goal was to hear where there is some common ground, and people just did a fantastic job. I was so impressed.
Now, one of the people, among the people we interviewed were, land use attorney Sean Tucker, one of your predecessors, and Sophia Tarabicos. They were talking about the effect they've already seen with you at the helm of Department of Land Use in terms of design standards, aesthetics, things that ultimately are a win-win for the community and these businesses and other development that are coming. Can you talk a little bit about how tonight was really about building on that momentum and just keeping it moving forward?
That was very kind of them, Tony. The vision is the county executive's vision, Tom Gordon. The council has been incredible at really supporting his vision. So everything we're able to accomplish in land use, we can't accomplish any of it without the county exec supporting us and directing us, and council. So that's where there's been, and it really, the direction ultimately comes from the community. Everything that was talked about tonight, everything that's in the land use action plan of what we're trying to achieve, all has come from the community. So the vision is from the community. Tonight was part of that, and having council members and the county exec here, it gets carried forward.
Yeah, as you mentioned, County Executive Gordon was here to start the program, and he said that he will try his hardest to try to get you to stay. What are his chances of being able to do that?
Well, he and I, there are several things that he wants put in place and completed, and we've agreed that I'm going to make sure that those efforts are put in place before I move on to the next phase. hiking in the Northwest.
By the way, Eileen was just on Spotlight on Newcastle County with Melody Kitchen for a fantastic interview about all the wonderful work you've been doing, and the bone I got to pick with you is you didn't tell us you were going to retire.
Well,
nobody wants to see you go.
Thank you. It's just been unbelievable. The county exec offered me this position almost 2 years ago, and it's been just fantastic because we're in a really exciting opportunity to make a difference, opportunity for change. Interestingly, the development community has been supportive of coming in with much better projects, working with the community. The community has been active, so it's just been great. And like I said, I'm very torn.
Lastly, here tonight, like I said, you had a mix of people. You had civic leaders, attorneys, politicians, and just general members of the public. What did you think about some of the, input they gave after hearing from? By the way, I forget the name of you had two consultants here.
Mark White is with White and Associates, and Craig Richardson with Clarion. They have done hundreds of zoning codes in every type of community, so they're great to work with.
And what did you think about the input from just those various groups?
What was exciting, and I hope people will join us in 6 weeks when we have 4 to 6 weeks when we have the next work session, is that there is common ground. When you get people together, everybody wants to see jobs. Everybody wants to see businesses that contribute. Everybody also wants to make sure that their neighborhood is not overrun with traffic. So what was pretty exciting tonight was to hear the groups come together and say, okay, here's where we think we can all agree and go forward.
Well, job well done tonight, Eileen,
so
and
much.
just overall in general. We're going to enjoy the time you have left here, and hopefully, County Executive Gordon can talk you into staying a little longer.
Thanks so much.
So
It's been great.
Thanks for chatting with the NCC TV News Desk.
Thank you.